All right, everybody, welcome to the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. I've got Dr. Shannon Irvine as our special guest today. I'm so excited for this conversation because as I go around and I have the honor of working with you guys, the estheticians and the aesthetic experts out there, something that I see consistently, regardless if you're a solo esthetician, if you're working in a medical environment, whether you're working in a day spa environment, mindset and confidence are two things that go hand in hand that 99.9% of the aesthetic experts out there have dealt with or struggled with and or could be improved upon, right? Because we always can improve upon ourselves. It's something that I've worked on myself personally quite a bit. And it's one of those things that a lot of times you hear, like, you know, in the law of attraction and the woo-woo stuff, they're always talking about mindset. But Dr. Irvine here is able to really piece the scientific facts and studies behind how this stuff works. And so if you are a little bit of a skeptic or anything like that, I hope that through this conversation, I'm not really sure where it's going to go, but I hope that we can put some of those ideas to rest. So Shannon, thank you so much for being here.
So fun to be hanging out with your tribe today and talk all about this beautiful thing that we have in our control.
Awesome. So before we get started really down this conversation, can you tell the audience just a little bit about your background and how you got started in this kind of work?
Yeah, sure. So much like most of your listeners, I have come from a solopreneur kind of background. I've been an entrepreneur all my life, was in the brick and mortar space, in the restaurant business for a while, and then had my own online marketing business, actually catering to the restaurant industry. And then I've mentored entrepreneurs for a long time, as well as in that process, I founded my nonprofit that I've been working on for the last 13 years called Mosaic Vision. In all of that, you know, I'm a pretty driven person, as a lot of your listeners are, I'm sure, if they're, running their own thing. And it all was humming along pretty well until I got married. And then,
and that ruined everything.
And it was just an adjustment. It was like, okay, like I'm a pretty driven person. So now I have to like accommodate this other amazing human being that's in my life.
Yeah.
And, it was a little bumpy, but then we got it figured out and we were cruising and everything was good. I'd gotten my master's in business. I was helping a lot of entrepreneurs. I was running my nonprofit. Things were going along great. And then I had my kids, and that, my friends, rocked my world to the place that up was down and down was up. And I remember seriously a moment, not my proudest moment, but a moment where I was like on my bed, sobbing my eyes out, going, what do I need to give up? What am I going to have to give up? Because for me, my kids at the time, my child at the time, but I have two now, are going to come first. They're a gift. They're a gift from God. And I need to be able to be that mom and be a good wife. But I'm a very driven entrepreneur, and I love serving people and love seeing them grow and love seeing them explode their businesses. And of course, I love helping the AIDS orphans in Uganda, and I felt like something's got to give. Like there's just not enough of me to go around. And any solopreneur, any solo esthetician, I'm sure, has had that feeling of like, there's just not enough of me to go around.
So many women in general, I think, were struggling to that, like, wanting to have it all, to just like you said, be the good mom, be the good wife, but also have your career and all of those things. And so it's this constant balance, how can we?
Yeah. It's like a tug of war almost. And what, I'd like a normal person probably would have either, realized it was a season, which I did realize. I knew I had to kind of pull back a little bit, but I just, at that moment, it was a breaking moment. And I realized I have to figure out, like, there are people who can put their families first, can run their businesses with excellence, and can be, an entrepreneur that's really making a difference and an impact in the world. There are people out there that are doing it, but yet I was not at the time. I was not doing it well. And, I was snappy with my kids, or I was, whatever the case may be, something wasn't jiving. And, I'd started developing mentorships with people that I really appreciated and could see that they were walking out the life that I wanted to have. But I even wanted more. And as I was finishing up my master's in business, I just decided, you know what? I want to learn the brain science behind the people who this kind of thing, this high performance, high achievement, but holding high values at the same time. How can they do it when the majority, 80 plus percentage of people just can't? What's
Mm-hmm.
different about them? We're all given as human beings the exact same DNA type of material to work with. So what's so special about them? And I switched my doctorate over to neuropsychology and started really getting into studying how the brain is wired, how it all actually works. And what I discovered in that time with my doctorate is that we all do have the same amount of material that we're working with. It's how those people think and apply what they're thinking to their lives and businesses that allow them to have the success that they have. And it's in opposition to that, it's the way that we think negatively that creates the situation that we're in that doesn't allow us to have that. And the cool thing is we can like see these and in a PET imaging scan, this cool technology where you can actually see the neural pathways growing when through imagery, when you're thinking in a way that is actually going to promote growth and success. And we can also see it just the opposite when you're not. And so that to me gave me encouragement, like, okay, I don't have to be some, IQ of 1,000 to be able to figure this out. I need to learn how to train my thoughts and figure that out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What was coming to mind when you were speaking is we all have the same amount of hours in the day. Like you, me, and Oprah, it's all 24 hours a day, and Oprah's like doing her thing, So I hear that, and I have definitely felt that being a new mom and trying to figure out that balance. When Taya was first born, so I took 4 months of maternity, and the first month I was sure I was going to close my business. I was like, there's no way that I can do this. I can't even think a coherent thought. I cannot even handle
go to the bathroom.
It was just like, all right, well, being an entrepreneur was great. Having my own business, loved it. But, this whole mom thing. And then by month 3, I was ready to go back to work. So I felt, I still feel kind of out of control a little bit. But I just now at 10 and a half months, Taya's 10 and a half months at the time we're recording this. And I'm just feeling like I'm getting my footing. And like, I'm getting like, okay, I can do this, like I can figure this out. But, there's so many women out there who are running businesses and doing it alone. I have an amazing supportive husband. I have an au pair that lives with us who is an amazing help. And these women who I know I'm in a unique situation, right? And I think like, how do these women do this alone? Or how do they do this in these situations that just seem so challenging, and they do it well. And I think that it does tie back to our topic today is, and kind of that saying, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're right. It's really focusing on mindset and shifting your perspective on the reality of your situation. I mean, just before the call, we were talking about your nonprofit and, AIDS orphans in Africa that you're helping to support through, getting them an education and their medicine that they need and all of those kind of things. And it's like, we really, when we look at the problems that we're having here in the United States or in the Western world, they're really first world problems compared to whatever else is out there. And so we really do need to shift our perspective into a global, what else is going on in the world, and really the most poor, poverty-stricken people in the United States are tremendously wealthy compared to some people, these AIDS orphans in Africa that are, going through their own situation. So
yeah. And the neat thing is, having been there in Africa a whole lot, it, people are people all over the world, and how we think about our situation really, really does impact the outcome that you're going to have. And that's just not, like you started the interview off with a great, a lot of people like name it and claim it, or, just say this affirmation every day and it'll come to pass. But I think, like, rewinding and understanding a little bit more about how our brains are wired and why that is the case helps you to understand that, like, literally what you feed your mind grows. And
mhm.
that's not just figurative, that is literal. There are in your brain, our brain is
Can I just say thank you for using figurative correctly? It's like I literally, and then, okay, never mind. Sorry. That
it's
just
okay.
went in my own
That's
little,
why I love you.
and I love that you just used that word correctly. Thank you.
You're welcome. So our brains, they are these amazing organisms, and they are wired for efficiency. You don't need anything external to create your success. You need to tap into it, some of the tools that are available out there, but you have everything that's within you to create the success that you want. Here's the deal. Your brain is set up in a way that it will automate and make efficient what you feed it. Here's the problem though. It's not going to tell you what you're feeding it, whether it's good or bad. So if you're going to feed it the negative thoughts, that I can't, and I'm not sure if I'm able, or I'm not worthy, and all of those tapes that we all have. First of all, we all have them. Not a human being on the planet doesn't have them. So as we're looking at someone online or some other esthetician or something, and you think they have it all, they have the same automatic negative thoughts we do. They might look different or sound different, but they need to remove them just like you do. But our brains are really cool because it automates the things that you want. And this is true, right? Because you got up this morning and you probably followed the exact same routine without thinking of it. For me, it's wake up, go get my coffee before I say anything to anybody, come back up to my bed, grab my Bible, read it for a bit, have enough coffee that I can get up and work out every single morning. I don't have to think about where the stairs are. Your brain automates that. And same thing with brushing your teeth, right? You pick up the toothbrush, you do not think about it, or drive to your kid's school. You don't think about it. That is all the beauty of your brain working for you and automating it. It uses nearly 20% of our overall energy consumption, our calories that we burn every day, get burned by our brain. So its job is to just make things super efficient. And it will grow these neural pathways. It's like freeways. You can picture like a Los Angeles freeway. It grows these freeways to help make automation simpler. And the more that you repeat a thought, the deeper that groove goes, or that freeway goes. And that's why it becomes so difficult to get out of patterns. Here's something cool that humor me on this one. Tonight, when you go to bed, grab a toothbrush with the opposite hand that you normally brush with and brush your teeth. And you're going to find, you're going to be like, why? Because you're going to see how much your brain has automated what you do, because it is so difficult to brush your teeth with the other hand. and you would not, like, it's a simple task, but because it's so automated, you don't have to think about it. And it also shows you how, if you feed your brain the things that are going to help it grow, the things that you want in your life, and kill off literally those things, those automatic negative thoughts that you don't want, those habits, all of those things that are holding you back. I call them success suckers, like those things that you tell yourself and you would never say to anybody else. Those are the things that you need to remove. And there's a very scientific process to remove them, which is beautiful, because sometimes we make things harder than they are when they're emotional, right? But the beauty is, if you feed that brain of yours daily, over and over again, the thoughts of where you want to be, what you want it to look like, how that's going to come to pass, and the possibilities, you'll get there, because your brain then looks to make that come to pass for you. It automates it.
So I want to dial this back
Yeah.
for a second, because for me, so I am a very, on the Myers-Briggs, I'm an ESFJ and I'm Uber J. So I'm
Okay.
very structured.
Yep.
I like to, go through
We're J
the,
sisters. I get you.
okay. All right. And so for me, it's been kind of a journey. We both share the same business coach who
Yeah.
is very much into the woo woo world. And
Yeah.
for me, that's been a process,
Yeah.
because I can say, yes, I understand that this works. Why does it, what is actually happening?
Right.
And so that's why I love the kind of neural pathway things. But when I was getting more and more into this, and they're talking about, I'm hearing different people talk about our thoughts, and we have to be aware. I was like, I'm not having thoughts. I'm not having these thoughts. And so it took a lot of work for me
Yeah.
to even get to the point where I was aware of my thoughts.
Right.
Um, some of the books that really helped were A New Earth. I read that several years ago when it very first came
Wow, I
out,
forgot
by
about that one. Yeah.
Eckhart Tolle. That was a game-changing book for me. And then Brene Brown's Daring
Yeah,
Greatly
greatly. Yeah.
was big for me as well.
Mhm.
And A New Earth was probably 10 years ago or something.
Yeah.
It was a really long time ago, but it was so impactful, and like,
Yeah.
that was the first time that I realized I am the thinker of my thoughts.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so anyway, doing that kind of work, reading those books and trying to be really, really aware of what I'm thinking, for me, the way that I discovered it wasn't by actually like listening to the thoughts that went in my head, but it was more like a feeling that I would
Mhm.
get
Mhm.
when certain things would happen. And so for the listeners out there, like, if you're sitting there thinking like, oh, I don't think I'm not worthy, or I don't think I'm whatever, it's like, your brain, what I've learned in this process, your brain has something like 60,000 thoughts a day, or something
Oh, way
insane
more.
like that. Way
Way
more. Okay.
more.
But you just don't, because of what you're saying,
Right.
we're automating those things, and we have those thoughts subconsciously
Yeah.
without even realizing them.
Yeah.
And so that's something to really be aware of, that, these, it's very deep. Like, you have to really do the work to understand what's happening. And
Yeah.
I've noticed for myself, this is kind of way going off on another tangent, but I'm going to share the story just in case it helps somebody out
Yeah.
there. For those of you who have been following me for a while, you probably know that I lost my dad when I was 17. He died from malpractice. It was a really challenging thing for me. It's not something I talk about very much. But I had a lot of really, really bad dreams after he died.
Mm, I bet.
And I was having these recurring dreams and just really nasty stuff. And I remember waking up one day and saying, I am not going to dream anymore. Like, this is over. And from that point, I was probably 18 years old. I'm going to be 37 in a couple months. I have had maybe 3 dreams
Mm,
that I can actually remember.
yeah.
So there was something in my mind that I closed the door.
Yep.
And as I have been working with our coach and really trying to dig deep into this work,
Yeah.
I notice that I'm starting to have dreams that I
Mhm.
can actually remember. And so I feel like I push down a lot of those thoughts into my subconscious, that like, hey, I'm not going to let
Right.
this nasty stuff that I don't want to deal with, I'm
Right.
pushing it way back so I don't have to think about it, but it's there,
Right.
right? And
Absolutely.
as you do the work and as you become aware of these thoughts and these stories that you've created for yourself, that kind of stuff starts to come back up.
It does.
So for anyone who, we've all had different traumatic things happen in our life, and we've all probably shoved them into a corner of, I don't want to deal with this. And so just be aware that some of that stuff may come up if you
Yeah.
start to do this work, but the good so much outweighs the bad that it is so worth it. So I want to encourage you to just be open to feeling those feelings, and getting through it, because it is all a part of your ability to get that mindset to build your confidence and get what you want.
I love the story that you shared. Thank you for being so transparent, and I adore you for that. And you're an INSJ? Is that what you are?
ESFJ.
Oh, you're an SFJ. Okay, so you're a sensor.
I'm a little E and
Okay.
a
Yeah,
big
you're
S
in the
and
middle.
big J.
Yeah, we were similar on the 50-50 scale there. So I love that you said that you sense it first. That's the sensing side of you. A
Mm-hmm.
thinker side of somebody is probably going to be more aware of like audible words. And so that's cool. Just this in our dialogue to know who you are. But what you brought up is really beautiful, because why we now that we know, I mean, and most people know that I just should think positive and think as, make sure we're thinking as it is and it'll come to pass. Why is that so difficult for us? Well, you just told us, because we as children learn to protect ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and and your reasoning as a child would reason. So I did the same thing. I had some abuse in my background in my childhood, and so therefore if I could perform, if I could protect myself by being the very best at everything I did, then nobody, I didn't have to let people in. Obviously that doesn't work. But as
Mm-hmm.
a child, I got accolades and everybody thought everything was fine, and so nobody, it didn't get the trauma
You
didn't
don't have to talk about that
Right,
part.
and I've talked about it. So our subconscious, which you brought up, 95% of our thoughts are in our subconscious. So when you suppress those, and I love the fact that you did something very protective. You said, I'm done. And sometimes we have to say, I'm done, and allow that to calm down. Your subconscious is still working on it. That's the good thing. And if you're not a sensor, if you're more on that thinking side, then you probably won't even realize that you're thinking these sabotaging thoughts. Like you said, you didn't realize it, except for when you come up against pressured situations,
Mm-hmm.
failures, tough situations. You're usually not telling yourself any of these automatic negative thoughts when things are just humming along and going great. It's when you come up against friction. That's when those old patterns will kind of come up. And I would encourage you, it's taking up real estate in your brain that's meant for your success, and it's keeping you from the very thing that you want. Like, you want this type of life, you want a successful business, you want a successful marriage, and you want to, we have these big dreams and desires, but there's that almost like a pulling, or like a something that's keeping you just a little bit short of it. That's why this work is so important. It is because it's holding you back, and you're smart enough. We're all smart enough to actually retrain that thought process. But it does require, I have like a 4-hour process that I take people through, and it's just a matter of recognizing it to begin with. Like, just being aware through this conversation, you're probably recognizing, wow, I think I do have some thoughts. Maybe when I brought up, the worthiness, or the you get right to the close of success and then you sabotage yourself. What is that? Like, ask yourself, when things get hard, what's happening for you? What happens in your life? What are your feelings?
Well, I think that, to relate it to our listeners, it's kind of a, I don't know what you call it, a buzzword or whatever, but there's
Yeah.
this thing about like, can I have a 6-figure business as a solo esthetician?
Yeah.
And I hear, the average esthetician in the United States makes about $33,000 a year.
Okay.
But there are a lot of estheticians out there, solo estheticians, and those working in day spas or medical spas, who are well over the 6-figure mark.
Okay.
And so it's not like it's this, unimaginable thing. It is a reality. And what I notice is that some of these estheticians say, I could never. Well, that's a
Mm.
thought.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I
yeah.
could never have a 6-figure business. Yes, you could.
Yes, you could.
You can. You have everything you need inside of you. You just have to do the work. And I think that a lot of the thought process, when people are thinking that leads them to competing only with price. And so
Mm-hmm.
they're lowering their prices, they're doing
Right.
coupons, it's all about how can I lower the price more to get people in, instead of realizing that they have a unique skill and it's a unique offering, and they don't
Yeah.
have to compete with price. They just have
Mhm.
to find their people. And, when they do that, that's the estheticians who are running these six-figure businesses, they're not discounting. They're
Mm-mm.
not, giving away free services to their friends and family, and only running Groupons and
Right.
being extremely protective with their clients that they do have. It's about like the ones that are making it are really aware of what they have to offer, and they have that confidence. And that confidence only comes when you have the right mindset.
And knowing, I love your tribe, because an esthetician, a medical spa, I'm a woman, I'm your client, right? And it's a very personal thing.
Oh yeah.
I am loyal to my esthetician, and I am loyal to the med spa that I go to. Loyal. Why? Because it's a building?
It's
No,
about the relationship.
absolutely. It's that
Hmm.
person. So it's the value that that human being brings in my life that I would not trade. So why would you discount that? Why
Hmm.
would you discount that value that you have? Look, there's 1,000 people online that teach businesses and entrepreneurs how to grow their business. That's one of the things that I do. But I'm the only one with my background, my experiences, my life, my studying, that's what makes me me, and that's what attracts my tribe to me. And it's the same thing. It's knowing that you have this uniqueness that's within you, and you express it through your craft, and that craft is blessing and building up men and women that really need you, and really need you to feel great, to feel fully themselves, to just, everybody has their different reasons. So
Yeah, and that's one thing that I love to talk about with estheticians is, yes, we do work to make clear people's skin and make them feel
yeah.
more beautiful. But the work that we're doing also is giving people confidence to be
Oh
their
my
best
gosh.
selves. Because
Yeah.
when someone feels like they look good, they stand with their head a little bit higher, their shoulders are back, they have that confidence to go out and do whatever it is. I mean, especially when we're dealing with something like acne, which can be debilitating
Yeah.
to some people,
Totally.
like not wanting to show their face, or always looking down, or just thinking that they're constantly staring at their skin and not at them. If we can clear that, if we can help that individual clear that, and they can really shine and show who they are,
Yeah.
it's a huge impact. So we don't need to undervalue what it is that we are doing. It's not just skincare. It's more than that. And
Yeah. And your clients and who you're serving will always be a mirror of who you are.
mhm.
So if you don't believe that you can get to that $100,000 six-figure mark, and you're thinking they're mirroring you, so you start to change your internal game. You start to really know your worth. First of all, know that it doesn't matter if there's a million estheticians out there on the planet. There's only one you, and you have a gift that needs to get out for your particular tribe. And once you fully embrace that, and then I love that you started to do step number 2 just automatically, because you've done this kind of work. I love it.
Oh,
So you record it, but then you immediately said you refuted it, right? You immediately said, no, that's not true. Because there are six-figure business owners, and so therefore you can do it, right? You immediately went there. A lot of people struggle with that. Like, one of the things I teach my clients is once you recognize one of those thoughts, you actually there's something neurologically that changes when you write it down. So you actually record it, and it's just for a short period of time. It's not like you're bringing it up so that you're going to focus on it and concentrate on it. It's just for a short period of time so that you can remove it. Perfect one for me was when I was starting my podcast, right? I had this thought of like, well, what do I really have to offer? I'm
mhm.
not sure if I have enough value to bring. And so even somebody like me who does this work, who teaches this work, who works with 5 to 8 figure business owners to get rid of these mental blocks, I still have them. You just know how to handle them differently once you have these tools. So I started refuting it like, well, I have my background in neuropsychology. So I started doing it here, right? I
Mhm.
started doing it in my mind. Like, mentally and started writing it down. But some of my clients can't get that. Like they'll write down what that thought is and they'll look at it and go, yeah, that's true. And when that happens, if that happens to you, if it's so deep seated that you write down that belief and you look at it and you actually do believe it, then I'm going to challenge you to imagine yourself saying that to your spouse, your significant other, or your child. And you are going to refute it. So like, with the podcast example, I imagine selling my son, Max, I don't think you have anything of value to bring to the world. And I'm like, no, you won't. I'll snap you.
It changes the perspective.
I'll cut you. You say that to my child, it brings up that ire in us as a mom. And then you're like, well, then why am I saying that to myself? Like, so you've got to refute that lie. It's a lie. It's all it is. And it's taken up real estate in your brain. So don't give it that anymore. But then you need to replace it with the truth, which you did by saying, here's the evidence. There's these 6-figure business owners and here's how they're doing it. And you model after those and you look at that. So you've got to record it and then refute it and then replace it with the truth. And then just keep repeating that until that freeway gets built and the other one flies off. Yeah.
That's the 4 R's, right? So recognize,
record it. Well, recognize and record are kind of the same. So you write it down. So you record it, you refute it. So make sure you refute that lie and then you replace it with the truth. And then you keep repeating that until it becomes as automatic as brushing your teeth, which it will.
So for the business owners, the solo estheticians, anyone listening to this episode, med spa owners, we all go through the same. It doesn't matter if you're making $1,000 a month or $100,000 a month. We all still have the same kind of blocks going on and beliefs. And so that's an easy way to get started on mindset work if you're not sure where to begin, is using Shannon's 4 R's. So very cool. That's great.
Yeah.
So any other tips that you want to share for the listeners on ways that they can kind of move past or go deeper in this work if it's something that's sparking interest for them?
Well, I'm always going to encourage to not do this work in a vacuum, because sometimes we just try to do this solo work and we're doing it alone and we don't have anybody to mirror against. So I'm going to always encourage you to get a coach to work with you, somebody you trust, somebody who will work with it with you. Could be a peer, but just somebody that's doing that. And then just knowing, like we talked about the subconscious, right? And 95% of our daily activities happen there. And the great news about that is once you do this work, eventually your value and the way you think will be back in the subconscious and you won't even have to think about it. It'll just, success will start coming to you. Doors will start opening for you because you are thinking differently. But I think my biggest encouragement is I know a mutual friend of ours says, the thinking, Einstein actually originally said it, but the thinking that got you right where you are today isn't going to be the same thinking that's going to get you to that next level. So know that. And don't be afraid of that. Like, let that be something that is exciting and that's a challenge. So you're using a great example, like your average esthetician making about $30,000 a year really wants to get to that 6-figure mark. So I would encourage you. So now you've got the 4 R's and how to work on the things that are success sabotaging you. You can do that work. And at the same time, who are those 6-figure earners that you respect, that you love their life? Don't ever emulate somebody or look at how they do it if they're not doing it in a way that you wouldn't want to live their life. That was really important to me. I don't want to follow somebody who is doing the hustle and grind 24/7. That's not my DNA. That to me, I want freedom and financial success so that I can spend time with the people I love. And I value that freedom and that time. So I would never, I'm very choosy about who my mentors are. I would encourage you to find 1 or 2 people in your business that have made it to that part and just go buy them coffee. Pick their brain, ask them how they got from where you are to where they are, what shifts they had to make. Most people are really open to giving back and doing that. And so that's a great way for you to be able to take a look at their thinking and
Mm-hmm.
how you're thinking. And then you can now you can visualize what it's like to think like them.
Mm-hmm.
Until now, you wouldn't know because you haven't been there yet. So both sides, right? We need to build those strong neural net pathways of getting us where we want to be through those mentors, through those relationships, and then also removing those things that are going to hold you back, for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And before we go, I want to just have you take a moment to talk a little bit about your charity, because I think that this is something that, you know, regardless of business, regardless of anything, it's so important for us just as human beings to give back. And whether that means, you know, through a nonprofit, you know, donating money, donating your time, it's something that really helps to shift your perspective and help you really to see how lucky and how blessed we are to live the lives that we do. So if you wouldn't mind just sharing a little bit about your nonprofit and the work that you're doing for the AIDS orphans in Africa.
Oh, it's my pleasure. That's my passion project. So, yeah, our ministry, our nonprofit is called Mosaic Vision. And I had the opportunity now going on 13 years ago, goodness, to be in Africa. And I was in a place where I was sitting with a bunch of community leaders, heads of churches and state. And we were all sitting around after all the rest of the tourists had gone to sleep. And I was just asking them about what their biggest struggle was. And they started sharing with me about child-headed homes. And as a Western American, I was like, what? What are you talking about? And so they started saying AIDS had devastated their community so much so that the middle generation of 20s to 50s were gone, just gone.
Wow.
And so what happens is you've got a 10-year-old that a family loses a mom and a dad to AIDS. And then you've got a 10-year-old caring for 4 younger kids, no aunties, no grandparents to look after them. And they are having to be an adult at 10 years old. They did nothing to deserve that. And as I was looking around the room, I'm seeing all these heads nodding and all these dignitaries and heads of state. And they started one by one sharing, yes, I've taken in 10 into my home, 10 kids into your home. Imagine that. And another one, yes, I've taken 4. Yes, I've taken, I mean, so they're all doing their part of literally taking them in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what was put on my heart then was just that these kids needed a voice,
Mm-hmm.
and they needed to, they're kids, they deserve childhood, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so our mission is to restore the lives of AIDS orphans in Uganda. And how we do that is through we go in and we sponsor orphans in a home. We sponsor all the kids that are in that household. So if we go in and there's a 10-year-old and 4 younger kids, that 10-year-old might have stopped school, 4 years ago, and they will go back to like second grade gratefully, which is amazing because we wouldn't think about that, but they would go back. So we send them back to school, we help them with their health care, we help restore their lives by hiring a widow to move into their homes with them so they can just have a normal family type environment where they can just become mature adults in a healthy way. And we do that through sponsorship, one person here sponsoring one child there, and just letting them know 8,000 miles away that there's enough love to carry them, and that we know that they exist, and no, it's not okay that your childhood was stolen from you, and we're going to play a part in restoring that.
And one thing that, and that's so beautiful. And one thing that I love is it's a quote by the Dalai Lama,
Mm.
and he said, and I'm going to totally butcher it, but you guys will get
I
the
butcher
idea. But it
quotes all
was
the time.
it was something like, if you don't think that one person can make a change in the world, try being locked in a small room with a mosquito. And so it was something along those lines. But it's like, we think like, oh, if I'm just going to sponsor a kid, or I'm just going to donate $20 or donate, something that's small to us, it makes a huge difference. And the money, and also just I think the goodwill
Yeah.
to know that there are people that care, and there are people who want to support the other humans. You're not alone. And so even the littlest donation, whether it's money or time, can be incredibly helpful. And I think it's just, as human beings, for us, it's humbling, and it helps us keep our perspective on and be grateful for the things that we do have in the world. So thank you, Shannon, for
Oh,
doing that work and for sharing what you're doing and for taking action, right? Because we all can do more of that in our lives.
yeah, we started with 2 kids way back 13 years ago, and we've helped nearly 1,000 orphans to date. And but we have a lot unsponsored. But my favorite thing that the bishop there said, which just still keeps me going today, is, you might think that your support of one child is just a drop in the bucket, but don't forget that the ocean is made up of drops.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, that's true. So days that I get tired, I remember that. And yeah, we love serving them, and it helps us be better people over here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Got it.
And I know everyone's going to love this episode. We will definitely include links to your website and to your nonprofit in the show notes. And where else can our listeners find you if they are wanting to learn more about you and the work that you do?
Oh, thank you. Well, you can find me on my website at drshannonirvine.com and across all socials at Dr. Shannon Irvine. I'd love to be able to serve you wherever you're at and help you get to the next place in your journey for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.